My wife was in the shower when her phone lit up. I miss your kisses. I texted back, come over. My husband's not home. 10 minutes later, our pastor was standing at my door. Now let me tell you how it actually happened. Because that moment didn't come out of nowhere. Not really. It was a Tuesday evening in March. Cold for that time of year in Fort Wayne, the kind of damp chill that creeps into your bones and just stays there. I'd gotten home around 7 later than usual, my lower back already barking from sitting too long at the warehouse office. I remember leaning against the kitchen counter, pressing my palm into the spot that always flared up after a long day. There was a cup of coffee sitting there I'd poured an hour earlier and forgotten about. Lukewarm, bitter. I took a sip anyway. Upstairs, the shower was running. Carla had just gotten home from her shift at the boutique out on Lima Road. I could hear the pipes rattling a little, same way they've done since we moved into that house back in 2003. Never fixed it. Always something else to pay for. Her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't go over right away. I'm not that guy. At least I didn't used to be. But it buzzed again, then lit up. I glanced, just a glance. Unknown number. And the message sitting there like it had been waiting for me specifically. I miss your kisses. I stared at it longer than I want to admit. Long enough for my coffee to cool all the way. Long enough for something inside my chest to go from confusion to something heavier. There are moments when you already know what something means, but your brain tries to stall, tries to give you an easier version. Maybe it's a wrong number. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe. But I'd been married to Carla 25 years. I knew the difference between maybe and truth. I picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could hear the shower upstairs steady normal. Like nothing in the world had changed. I typed slow, slower than I expected. Come over, my husband's not home. I read it twice. It didn't even feel like I wrote it. Then I hit send. I set the phone back down exactly where it had been. Same angle, same spot next to the salt shaker. Like that would somehow keep things normal. It didn't. Those next 10 minutes stretched out longer than anything I can remember. I walked to the living room, sat down, stood back up, checked the front window, nothing. I told myself I was stupid, that nobody was actually going to show up, that this was just something else, something explainable. The doorbell rang. Sharp, quick, not hesitant. I felt it in my stomach more than I heard it. I walked to the door slower than I should have. Every step felt heavier than the last, like my body knew something I hadn't fully caught up to yet. When I opened it, Pastor Raymond Pike was standing there. 61 years old, clean haircut, that calm, practiced expression he always wore like he was about to pray over something or fix it. He had a jacket on, nice dark gray. Looked expensive without trying to. And in his hand, a pie plate covered in foil. Peach, I'd later realize, Carla's favorite. For a second, neither of us said anything. I must have stepped back without thinking because I caught the smell of his cologne, sharp clean. Something you'd buy at a department store, not the kind of thing that ever belonged in my house. It clashed with everything I was: motor oil, old coffee work boots by the door. He smiled just slightly. Evening, Daniel. Same voice he'd used at our kitchen table 2 months earlier, talking about communication, about patience, about keeping God at the center of the marriage. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, and something inside me didn't break. That's the part people get wrong. It didn't explode either. It just shifted from confusion to something colder. Footsteps behind me. Carla. I didn't have to turn to know she'd stop the second she saw him. You gonna let me stand out here all night? Raymond said, light tone, like this was some kind of normal visit. I stepped aside. No, I said. My voice sounded steady, even to me. Come on in, Pastor. He walked past me like he'd done it 100 times before, which now that I think about it, he probably had. Carla was standing halfway down the hall, hair damp, wrapped in a towel frozen in place. Her eyes went from him to me to the phone sitting on the counter. She knew. Daniel, she started. I held up a hand, not aggressive, just enough to stop her. Let's not do this halfway, I said. Not tonight. Raymond set the pie down on the kitchen counter like he belonged there. Like this was just another visit, another evening. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding, he said. I almost laughed at that. Almost. Instead, I pulled out a chair and sat down at the table. No, I said. I think this is the first time things are actually clear. Carla didn't move, didn't come closer. Raymond stayed standing. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint drip of water from Carla's hair onto the hardwood floor. 25 years. A house, 2 kids, a whole life built one paycheck at a time. And the man I trusted to help fix what was already slipping walked through my front door carrying a pie and acting like I wouldn't notice the lie sitting right in front of me. I leaned back in the chair, looked at both of them, and said the only thing that made sense anymore. Looks like we've got more to talk about than scripture. I didn't sleep in the house that night. Not because anyone told me to leave. Not because there was yelling or things being thrown. It never got that far. That's the strange part people don't expect. We talked, or at least they tried to. Raymond used that same calm voice, the one that always sounded reasonable no matter what he was saying. Daniel, this isn't what you think. Carla stood there, arms folded tight across her chest, like she was holding herself together. Can we just sit down and talk about this, she said. I remember looking at both of them and realizing something simple. They were already on the same side. I grabbed my keys off the counter. Didn't slam anything, didn't raise my voice. I'm going to take a drive, I said. Carla took a step toward me. Daniel, please don't. I stopped in the doorway. Don't what I asked. I don't think. She didn't answer. I walked out. The cold air hit harder than I expected. It always does in March around here. That damp, late winter kind of cold that gets into your jacket and just stays. I got into my F-150, turned the key, and just sat there while the engine idled. Didn't even pull out right away. The radio clicked on some old country station low volume. I didn't change it. Didn't really hear it either. I just sat there staring at the steering wheel. You'd think I'd be angry, throwing something, driving across town to Raymond's place, doing something stupid. Truth is, I was tired. Tired in a way that had been building for years. I just hadn't named it yet. I leaned back in the seat, pressed my hand into my lower back again, trying to ease the ache. And I started thinking, not about the message, not even about Raymond standing in my doorway with that pie. I started thinking about everything that came before it. I met Carla in 1998, Allen County Fair. I was 24 working full-time and picking up weekend shifts when I could. She was 21 laughing with her friends near one of those game booths. I remember the lights strung up overhead, the smell of popcorn and fried dough. I remember thinking she looked easy to talk to. Not flashy, not complicated. We talked for maybe 10 minutes that night. I asked for her number like it was the most normal thing in the world. It kind of was. We got married 3 years later. Small ceremony, nothing fancy. Saved where we could, spent where it mattered. By 2003, we had the house. North side of Fort Wayne, 3 bedrooms, 1 cracked driveway, and pipes that never quite worked right. Evan came in 2004, Lily in 2007. And from there, life just happened. Work, bills, school events, grocery runs, doctor visits. No big turning point, no dramatic shift. Just years stacking on top of each other. Then 2015. That's when my back went out. Warehouse job, lifted something wrong, heard a pop that I still feel some days. After that, everything slowed down. I took a logistics job, less pay, less strain, more sitting. Carla said it was fine. She said we'd adjust. And we did, on paper. But something changed in me. I know that now. I got quieter, more careful, started thinking twice before spending money, before speaking up. Somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like the man I used to be. And somewhere along the same stretch of road, Carla stopped looking at me the same way. She started working more hours around 2018. First part-time at that boutique, then full-time. Said she liked getting out of the house. I didn't argue. Then came the church. We'd always gone off and on, holidays mostly, but around 2 years ago, Carla got more involved. Committees, events, planning dinners. And Pastor Raymond Pike was always right there in the middle of it. At first, I was glad. He seemed steady, reliable, the kind of man people trusted. When things between me and Carla started getting distant, he was the one she suggested we talk to. Just to help us communicate better, she said. So we sat at our kitchen table with him, more than once. I remember one night in particular. I'd said something about feeling like things were off, that Carla was pulling away. Raymond nodded slowly, hands folded, like he was thinking hard about it. Daniel, he said, sometimes as husbands, we're called to lead through patience, through understanding, not suspicion. Carla didn't say anything, just sat there. He went on. There's a humility required in marriage, especially when things feel uncertain. I remember nodding. I remember thinking he was right, that maybe I was the problem, that maybe if I just handled things better, worked a little harder, stayed calmer, things would settle. Looking back now, it's almost embarrassing how easy that was to believe. The truck heater kicked on blowing warm air that smelled faintly like dust. I glanced at the house. Lights still on, shadows moving behind the curtains. I didn't go back in. Not that night. I drove a few blocks, parked near a closed hardware store, and leaned my seat back. The radio was still playing. I stared at the ceiling of the cab for a long time. Then I said it out loud, just once. All right. Not loud, not angry. Just decided. I wasn't going to storm back in there. I wasn't going to yell. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let them explain this away like it was some misunderstanding. If there was something going on, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. How long? How deep? And what they thought they were going to walk away with. The next morning I woke up stiff and cold, my neck twisted from sleeping wrong. Sat up slowly, let the truck warm up again, and checked my phone. No messages from Carla. That told me more than anything she could have said. I drove to a gas station, grabbed a coffee, and sat in the parking lot scrolling through the church website. Didn't even know what I was looking for at first. Then I saw it. Spring Fellowship Banquet, Saturday, March 21st, hosted by Pastor Raymond Pike and Carla Mercer. I stared at that line for a long time. Read it twice. Then I set the phone down on the dashboard, took a sip of coffee, and nodded to myself. Saturday, I said. That was going to be the day. I didn't go home right away after that. Not because I didn't have a right to be there. It was my house as much as hers. Maybe more if you looked at the paperwork. But I needed a little space to think without somebody trying to talk me out of what I'd already seen. I drove over to my sister Janice's place in Auburn. She answered the door in a sweatshirt and reading glasses, coffee in hand, like she always did on her days off. She took one look at me and said, "You look like hell." "Morning to you, too," I said. She stepped aside. "Get in here." I didn't tell her everything all at once. That's not how I talk. I sat at her kitchen table, wrapped my hands around a fresh mug, and just started from the part that mattered. "The pastor came over last night," I said. Janice didn't react right away, just waited. I texted him, I added, from Carla's phone. That got her attention. "Daniel," she said slowly, "what are you saying?" "I'm saying," I said, "he wasn't surprised to be invited." That was enough. Janice leaned back in her chair, let out a long breath, and said, "All right, then we're not guessing anymore." That's what I needed. Not comfort, not sympathy. Clarity. She asked questions, direct ones. "How long you think this has been going on? You got access to your accounts, anything in writing?" I shook my head on that last one. "Not yet." She nodded once. "Then don't go in there swinging," she said. "You'll lose everything that way." That word stuck. Everything. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about them sneaking around. There were conversations I'd had with Raymond, private ones about money, about the house, about retirement. Things I shouldn't have been saying to anybody outside my family. And suddenly it didn't feel like coincidence anymore. I left Janice's place with a list in my head. First thing I did was call Marty. Marty Salazar has been my friend since we were both in our 20s. He runs a print shop over in Fort Wayne now, knows everybody, notices things most people miss. He picked up on the second ring. "Dan, what's up?" "I need a favor," I said. "All right," he said, no hesitation. "What kind?" I told him just enough. Not everything, just the part about Raymond. There was a pause on the line. Then Marty let out a short, dry laugh. "Man," he said, "that's a new one." "Can you keep an eye out?" I asked. "Nothing crazy, just if you see his truck somewhere, it shouldn't be." Marty didn't ask why. "Yeah," he said, "I can do that." It didn't take long. 2 days later, he called me back. "I think I got something," he said. "Where?" "Little motel out past Columbia City, the kind with the flickering sign and curtains that never open." I didn't say anything. "He's got that sticker on the back of his truck, right?" Marty added, faith over fear. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah," Marty said. "Same one. Parked crooked too. Like he didn't want to be seen, but also didn't know how to hide." There was a pause. Then Marty said in that flat way, he has guys like him still need dark places, Dan. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Did you get a picture, I asked. Course I did. He sent it over a minute later. I stared at it on my phone. Raymond's truck, no doubt. That should have been the moment I lost it. But I didn't. If anything, it made things clearer. Cleaner. I called a lawyer the next morning. Denise Harrow, downtown office. Came recommended through a guy at work who'd gone through a divorce a few years back. She didn't waste time. I sat across from her desk, laid out what I knew, and she listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back slightly and said, all right, here's what we're not going to do. I nodded. You're not going to confront her emotionally again, she said. You're not going to threaten him, and you're not going to do anything that makes you look unstable. I'm not unstable, I said. She gave me a look, not unkind, just direct. I believe you, she said, but that's not what matters. What matters is what can be shown. That landed. She continued. You need records, financials, communication if you can get it legally, and you need to separate what you can quietly. I nodded again. She leaned forward slightly. Don't act like a hurt husband, she said. Act like a man protecting what's his. That was the second time someone had said something that stuck. I left her office with more than just instructions. I left with the direction. The next couple days were careful. I didn't storm into the house demanding answers. I went back, calm, quiet. Carla tried to talk. I think we should sit down. Not yet, I said. I checked accounts, copied documents, changed what I could without making it obvious. Found things I didn't like. Transfers I didn't remember approving, notes about refinancing options, conversations she'd had with Raymond about planning ahead. Planning ahead. That phrase kept coming up. And every time I saw it, I felt that same cold shift settle in deeper. By Friday night, I had enough. Not everything, but enough. Enough to know this wasn't new. Enough to know they thought they were being careful. And enough to know they hadn't expected me to push back. Saturday was coming. The church banquet. I sat in my truck that night, parked outside the house again, looking at the lights through the front window. Then I said it same as before, quiet, steady. I don't need to break him, I said. I paused, then added, I just need people to see him. Saturday night came colder than it should have. Not freezing, just that sharp edge in the air that makes people walk faster from the parking lot to the door. The church gym lights were already on when I pulled in. Rows of cars, familiar ones, folks I'd known for years. I sat in my truck for a minute before getting out. Hands on the wheel, breathing steady. Then I grabbed the folder from the passenger seat, stepped out, and walked in like I belonged there. Because I did. Inside, it was exactly what you'd expect. Folding tables lined up across the gym floor, paper plates stacked at one end, crock pots plugged into extension cords. Someone had set out a sheet cake with bright blue icing that said Spring Fellowship in looping letters. Voices everywhere. Laughter, chairs scraping, the low hum of a coffee machine in the corner. I nodded at people as I passed. A couple nodded back. Nobody knew yet. Carla was near the front talking to one of the women from the committee. She saw me before I got too close. Her face changed. Not dramatic, just tightened. She excused herself and walked toward me. Daniel, she said, low voice, I didn't think you were coming. I didn't think a lot of things this week, I said. She glanced toward the stage area where Raymond was standing with a few of the church board members. Can we not do this here, she asked. Do what I said. She didn't answer. Raymond looked over then, saw me. For just a second, something flickered across his face. Then it was gone. He walked over like everything was normal. Daniel, he said, offering that same steady tone. Glad you could make it tonight. I looked at him. Wouldn't miss it, I said. There was a pause, just a second. Enough for him to know something wasn't right. But he smiled anyway. Good, he said. We're about to start. He moved back toward the front. Carla stayed where she was. Please, she said quietly. Just don't. I met her eyes. For once, I said, I'm not the one making this harder than it needs to be. She swallowed, looked away, and stepped back. I took a seat at one of the tables. People settled in. Plates filled. Conversations faded down into that low murmur you get when everyone knows something's about to begin. Raymond stepped up to the microphone. Tapped it once. Evening, everyone, he said. His voice carried clean across the room, confident, familiar. He started talking about community, about family, about how important it was to support one another through difficult seasons. I listened, really listened. Every word landed different now. You could hear the coffee pot gurgling in the corner. Someone dropped a fork and it clattered against the floor. A couple of the older ladies laughed quietly at something off to the side. Normal sounds. Normal night. Until it wasn't. Raymond wrapped up his remarks with a line about honesty, about how strong families are built on truth. Then he said, "Before we close in prayer." I stood up. Chair legs scraped the floor louder than I expected. A few heads turned. I walked to the front, folder in hand. Raymond watched me the whole way. I reached the microphone. It gave off a sharp, high-pitched screech when I adjusted it. That sound cut through the room like a blade. Everything went quiet. I looked out at the crowd. People I'd known for years, neighbors, friends, folks who'd sat across from me at potlucks and prayer nights. Then I looked at Raymond. "Pastor Pike," I said. My voice sounded steady, even, like I'd rehearsed it. "I just have one question before you close us out." He didn't answer, just stood there. I continued. "You've spent the last few months counseling me and my wife on honesty in marriage." A few people shifted in their seats. "So I was hoping you could explain something," I said. I opened the folder, took out a printed screenshot, held it up just enough. The text I said, from your burner phone, the ones that say, "I miss your kisses." The room went still. Not quiet like before. Different kind of still. Carla stood up behind me. "Daniel." I didn't turn. Raymond's face didn't change right away. He was good at that. "Daniel," he said, calm as ever, "this is not the place." I cut him off. "You came to my house," I said, "after sending that message." A murmur rippled through the room. I set the paper down on the table next to the microphone. "I invited you," I added, from her phone. Now people were looking at each other. Whispers starting. Carla stepped closer. "You're embarrassing yourself." I turned then. "No," I said, "I'm done being embarrassed for things I didn't do." She stopped. Raymond tried again. "There's context here that you're not understanding." I reached into the folder again. Pulled out another sheet, dates, times. "You want context," I said. "Here's 8 months of it." That's when it shifted. Not all at once, but enough. One of the board members stood up. "Raymond," he said. Raymond didn't look at him. I reached down, picked up something from under the table. The pie plate. I'd brought it with me, still wrapped in that same foil. I walked over and set it down on the table in front of him. Slow, careful. "You left this at my house Tuesday night," I said. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. The room understood. Carla's voice came sharp then. "This is not how a Christian man behaves, Daniel." I looked at her. Really looked. "I carried your mess in silence," I said. "I'm not doing that anymore." Silence again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt settled. One of the board members stepped forward, putting a hand on Raymond's shoulder. "We need to talk," he said. Raymond finally looked at him. Didn't argue. Didn't explain. Just nodded once. Carla didn't say anything else. Neither did I. I turned, walked back through the tables, past the coffee, past the cake, past people who suddenly didn't know where to look. And I walked out. Didn't wait to see what happened next. Didn't need to. The house felt different when I walked back in that night. Quieter. Not peaceful, just empty in a way it hadn't been before. Carla wasn't there. Her car was gone. Closet half open. A few things missing if you knew where to look. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to tell me she'd made a decision. I set my keys down in the same spot as always and stood there for a minute. No TV, no voices. Just the hum of the fridge and the old clock on the wall ticking louder than I remembered. I poured myself a cup of coffee, fresh this time. Sat down at the kitchen table. Same chair. Same view. Different life. Lily came home about an hour later. She walked in, dropped her bag, and froze when she saw me sitting there. "You went?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. She studied my face. Kids always do that, even when they're grown. "What happened?" I didn't rush it. "I told the truth," I said. She nodded slowly like she already knew what that meant. "Mom left," she said. "I figured." There was a long pause. Then she pulled out a chair and sat across from me. "I'm mad," she said, "at both of you. I know, I said. You didn't have to do it like that. I took a sip of coffee. Maybe not, I said, but I wasn't going to keep carrying something that wasn't mine. She looked down at the table. Didn't argue. That was enough for me. The next few days were paperwork. Not dramatic, not loud. Just steady. I met with Denise again. Gave her everything I had, copies of accounts, records, notes. She went through it like she'd seen it 100 times before. You did this right, she said. That meant more than I expected. We locked things down, protected what needed protecting. The house stayed in my name. Retirement accounts secured. No rush decisions, no emotional mistakes. Carla sent a message a couple days later. Short. We need to talk. I read it, didn't answer right away. Not out of spite. Just because for once I didn't feel the need to rush to fix something. I eventually replied, we'll talk, just not the way we used to. That was enough. Word about Raymond spread faster than I thought it would. Church board put out a statement, stepping down pending review, careful language, polite. But people talk. A few days after, I got a call from a man I barely knew. Name was Harold, sat a few rows behind us most Sundays. I just wanted to say he told me you did the right thing. I didn't say much. Then he added, you're not the only one who had questions about him. That stuck. Another woman reached out too. Said Raymond had advised her and her husband on some financial decisions that didn't sit right afterward. Nothing illegal maybe, but enough to make people uneasy. I didn't go looking for those conversations. They found me. And I realized something I hadn't thought about before. This wasn't just about me. But I didn't feel like a hero. Didn't feel like I'd exposed something big. I just felt done. A week later, things settled into something close to routine. Not the old routine. A new one. Quieter mornings, fewer voices in the house. More space than I was used to. Some nights felt longer than others. But I slept in my own bed again. That mattered. One evening I stepped out onto the back patio. Early spring air. Still a little cold, but not biting anymore. You could hear birds starting up again in the trees like the season was trying to move forward whether anyone was ready or not. I had a mug of coffee in my hand. Leaning against the railing, I looked out at the yard. Grass still patchy from winter, fence leaning a little on one side, and my old F-150 sitting in the driveway. Paint chipped, couple scratches along the side. But it started every morning. Still got me where I needed to go. I stood there for a while, just breathing in the cold air, thinking about everything that had happened, not trying to make it mean more than it did. I didn't win anything. Didn't get some big clean ending, but I didn't lose myself either. And for where I was a couple weeks ago, that was enough. If you've ever had to start over at a point in life where you thought things were already settled, you know it doesn't come with a big speech. It's quiet, it's steady, but it's real. Thanks for listening. And if this story meant something to you, stick around. There's more to tell.